We're on the record in case number 2022-252, electronic application of Rowan Water for an alternative rate adjustment and an investigation into Rowan Water and its individual directors and manager for alleged failure to comply with KRS 278-300 and a commission order. My name is Kent Chandler. I'm chairman of the Kentucky Public Service Commission and will be presiding over the hearing today. Joining me is Commissioner Mary Pat Regan and Vice Chair Angie Hatton. For those that are in the hearing room today, I ask that you silence or turn off your cell phones. That's it. Because I'm not going to say anything about the virtual. We have one virtual witness here today, and everyone else is here in person. The purpose of today's hearing is to take evidence in this matter. Before we start, I'll take an entry of appearance of counsel for the applicant and I guess also respondent, Rowan Water.
Allison Honaker, Honaker Law Office here on behalf of Rowan Water.
Okay. And for commission staff.
Mariah Tessie on behalf of staff.
Okay. I noticed that yesterday, I believe, evidence of public notice was filed for runs in the newspapers in Morgan County, in Rowan County, and in Carter County. Is that right?
Yes, the Licking Valley Courier also does Elliott County. So it doesn't say that on the affidavit, but they do Elliott County as well.
And that would be the entire footprint, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Honaker, I do have one question. There was the affidavit, and it doesn't matter, just to be very clear, but I'm just curious. The affidavit for the Licking Valley Courier indicated that it ran on the 20th and the 27th, and there are tear sheets effectively for the 20th and the 27th, except, and maybe I'm missing something, I can't find the notice of the hearing on the run for the 27th. It doesn't matter, frankly, because the 20th is between 7 and 21 days, but I just...
And they were only asked to run it once, so we're not sure why they ran it twice.
Okay. I just wanted to note that on the record that it didn't seem like there was any mention of the notice in the tear sheet that was provided for the 27th, but we have everything we need, so we'll continue with the hearing. Let's see. We've got a motion for an extension of time, which I guess has effectively been taken care of. Is that right, Ms. Honaker?
I think the order came out yesterday, actually, yes, doing that. We did the trial run yesterday with Mr. Johnson. So.
Great. And then you specifically made a request, it's not necessarily a motion, to amend the heading, and we'll take that up in a final order. I think that was in relation to Mr. Cox as well as Mr. Stevens. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Stevens has passed away, and he had passed away before this started, I think November. I think October.
Could you file something in the record? I know you've mentioned it, but just maybe an affidavit or something with the date so that since we know when we open this, that we can address it in the final order. That'd be great. Maybe just a notice of filing would be helpful. All right. Okay. So I'll just ask Ms. Honaker, is everybody that's behind you with the district today?
Yes, and they're all witnesses. We have the general manager and 3 of the board members.
The association, excuse me.
Then, yes. And then the chairman is the one that's participating virtually.
Okay. So no one is here today to provide public comments. Also, pursuant to the information that was included in the public notices that we discussed, instructions on how to provide a virtual public comment were included yesterday and today on the Public Service Commission website. As of 9 o'clock, no one had indicated their interest in providing public comment in this case, either in person or virtually. I'd remind anybody that's viewing this live or before submission of the case that anyone wishing to provide a public comment can do so by either going on our website, psc.ky.gov. They can email the PSC at psc.comment@ky.gov, or they can mail public comments to the PSC at 211 Sower, S-O-W-E-R, Boulevard, Frankfort, Kentucky 40602. We ask anytime that somebody provides a public comment, they include their name, their address, and the case number, which in this matter is 2022-00252. All right, so no one interested in providing public comments. Before we get started, is there anything else, Ms. Honaker?
No.
All right, would you like to call your first witness?
Yes. We would call Larry Johnson, who's the virtual witness, and we appreciate the commission allowing him to do this virtually.
Of course. All right, Mr. Johnson, if you'll unmute, can you confirm that you can hear us?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
All right, perfect. We can hear you as well. If you will, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Larry Johnson. Reside at 235 Cumberland Drive in Moray, Kentucky.
Okay. Ms. Hunter, if you may ask.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you.
I'm just making sure you can hear me before I start asking questions. What is your position on the board?
I am the board chair, Rowan Water.
Okay. And how long have you been on the board for Rowan Water?
I think I've been chairperson for around 8 years altogether, about 24 years, I think.
Okay. So you've been on the board for 24 years, but probably chairman for 8? Is that what you just said?
Around 8.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
All right. And did you file a response that you signed an affidavit for to be filed in this investigation case?
Yes.
And are you aware that we're here today for two things, basically? Are you aware that we're here today because it's alleged that Rowan Water did not file a rate application with the commission like it was ordered to do so in 2021-00042?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And were you aware at the time that that order was issued that you were supposed to file a rate case by April of 2022?
No, we didn't know.
Okay. And when did you become aware of that requirement? Do you recall?
I think it was around May in 2023. I know we were quite a bit later over an extended period of time, I understand.
Okay. Did you willfully violate that commission order to not file the rate case?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And do you know why the rate case wasn't filed by the deadline? Is it just because you weren't aware of it, or?
I, as board chair, was not aware of it, and I'm sure the board as a whole was not aware of it. The time we found out about it, like I said, we're in violation, which we are.
Okay. And so are you also aware that we're here today regarding several vehicle leases that the board entered into without commission approval?
Yes.
Okay. And were you present at the meetings when those leases were discussed?
I was.
Okay. And were you present at the meeting when it was voted to enter into those leases?
I was, yes.
Okay. Do you know why the board voted to enter into those vehicle leases?
Several reasons. I know we did a study, our manager did a study on our vehicle maintenance and so forth. Before we were been purchasing our vehicles, outright buying them, and so keeping them longer, I guess, at the time, and which with that came more maintenance. Matter of fact, one vehicle had transmission replaced. We were on the third transmission, so we were keeping the vehicles longer. And after we got to looking into leasing with Enterprise and getting some quotes, and you all might remember at that time, we were in the COVID area at that time, and also used vehicles, especially utility trucks, were really going very high, and they were scarce. And so we voted as a board to go ahead and look into leasing, and we decided that we did lease 3 at that time. And after some period of time, as these trucks began to lease, we didn't even expire really on 48 months. We turned them back in. These trucks were selling really, really higher than we anticipated. Matter of fact, they still are. They're really a late model used pickup truck is top market right now. So we could almost keep a new vehicle at a shorter period of time and get a bigger return. So I think it's been a good venture with the leasing program, and I think it's a win-win for us.
Okay, but are you aware that you should have come to the commission and sought approval for that under KRS 278-300? Now, are you
Yes,
aware
I-
that you should have done that? Okay. And I think you
Yeah, for-
mentioned just now when you were talking that Rowan Water had never really financed vehicles before, that you all had just purchased them outright prior to this. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So you hadn't had to come to the commission for any of your vehicle purchases prior to these leases being entered into because you didn't finance them, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And had you come to the commission to get approval under 278-300 for other things, like your loans that you entered into, that kind of stuff?
Yes, I think so. We did.
And whenever you all decided to enter into these leases, did you have legal counsel present at any of these board meetings?
No, I'm not aware. We did not.
Okay, and did the board discuss that with legal counsel at all prior to that, prior to entering into those leases?
No, I don't think so. We did not.
So since this time and since the investigation and everything has happened, has the board taken some steps to try to make sure that these things don't occur again? Did you all enter into some policies that going forward on the review of commission orders and financing?
Yes, we have. Yes, on both of those topics, yes.
Okay. And those have been filed into the record of this case, correct?
Correct.
And have you now reviewed the 278-300 statute for the financing? Have you all reviewed that now as a board?
We have copies available right now, and we will continue to review those and the orders and financing policies
Okay.
and see that this does not come up and happen again.
And has the board had other discussions regarding maybe training, getting some training for the board?
We have discussed that, and we will continue at our board meetings, and we are going to have more training involved. We're going to read more, and we're going to try to have I'll kind of take responsibility as being a board chair of maybe not having the professional and relationship with PSC that we should have, and we're going to take steps to improve that, and for not doing that, I'm truly sorry, and but we'll see if we can't do better in the future on that.
Okay. So has the board discussed maybe having someone come and offer training for you all at your annual meetings in December? So that it's kind of consistent and you're doing it once a year at least?
Right, we're making preparation now. We will have somebody there present to discuss and to lead us somewhat into with legal issues and so forth, yes.
Okay. All right. I have nothing further.
Ms. Tessie?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning to you.
I just had a few questions. I think I'll start with the failure to comply with the commission order first, if that's okay. I was wondering if prior to this case, you ever read the commission's orders that involved your utility?
I had not yet. I had not, no.
So, since this case, I know that you talked about the new policy with Ms. Honaker. Have you read some of the orders that have been entered since the case was expanded to include the investigation?
Some of them, yes. I've tried to get an update and read some of those orders when it comes to procedures and legal counsel reviews and records of proceedings and so forth, yes.
Okay. And do you all have a specific email address as board members that you check or could have access to the orders?
No, just my personal email is all I have, and I don't know if the other members of the board have them or not, or management, but if that's something we need to look into the future, we can certainly do that.
Is it Mr. Patrick's responsibility to keep that updated with the commission, the email address?
Um, he relates most of all the issues to the board at our regular meetings. So, I try to keep close with him, on different things between meetings. So, but he's really good at presenting those to the board. So, I guess it is a responsibility, yes.
Okay. And you mentioned to Ms. Honaker that you all plan on doing more trainings. When was the last time you attended a training, any sort of water training?
I confess, I don't think I have anything at a state level, maybe on a local level here with some in Moorhead, but not on a state level. No, I try to keep up and read some of the meetings that is taking place across the state, and usually it's in down west state or somewhere there. But personally, I have not attended. No.
Okay. And well, if you haven't attended, that takes care of a few of my other questions. But you mentioned that you all had attempted to gain PSC approval in the past for financing, different financing, like refinancing of bonds and that type of thing. Do you recall some of those cases?
We did. I'm not sure the date on that, but what we did, we took our long-term loans, and we had 6 of them, I think, at the time. So I don't know how many $1 million was. We've got a number here somewhere. I don't have it with me right now, but by consolidating those loans, we got those at a lower percentage rate of interest rate, which has really been a really good thing for us. But we work closely with PSC, I understand, to get that done, and it's been a good thing for Rowan Water to do that.
So that was I think you're referencing the underlying case, the case that the commission originally ordered you all to file the rate application in. Does that sound right?
Yes, I think so. Yes, that's right.
Okay. So I want to move on to your response in the leases just a bit. And you're going to have to help me because I freely admit I'm a little confused. But in your response, in paragraph 13, you talk about the different scenarios that the district reviewed before entering in the lease agreements. And then just a minute ago, when Ms. Honaker was asking you questions, you mentioned a study. Can you elaborate a little bit on what options Rowan Water considered prior to entering into the leases?
No, really, that study I was referring to there, is just that we, I think management had talked to some other utilities that were similar to ours and that were entering into leasing vehicles, along with here in Moorhead, our plain board here, and we were kind of comparable with some of theirs, and I think it showed that by doing that, it was a saving money for the board, and I think we tied up a lot less of our own money and draw more interest, if you will, maybe on some of our money to go into a leasing on that. But other than that, I don't think I can elaborate any more on what you're getting at turned out.
Okay, so, and you can correct me if you disagree. So when you're saying study, you're saying that your manager went out and talked to some other similarly situated businesses, and you all went with the leasing with Enterprise as your option, best option.
Yeah, we did not just jump in haphazardly into this. We went for a few months there before we went into it. Really, we just went with 3 vehicles at first. We wanted to give them a trial run, and we saw that into those leases that was working very well. And then we started with the other ones too. But we went on these 48-month, I think, lease what they were, and we just thought we were leasing that. We didn't look at it as a loan at all. Long-term loans is, I guess, what I was focusing on with USDA and so forth, those loans. And when we come to leasing a vehicle, I'd lease, personally at home, we leased vehicle or two, and didn't look at it as a loan, I guess, and that's our oversight, my oversight, and I apologize for that. And yes, I guess we're guilty of not contacting PSC when we should have on that was legal counsel.
Well, can I ask you if you recall any specific numbers or calculations related to the cost of the leases beyond the terms?
No, I guess you probably, maybe our manager, Mr. Patrick, he can get more into that with I knock in on that, but I really can't. I'm sure he can.
Well, that was actually going to be my next question. I think Mr. Patrick signed for the district on all of the paperwork. Is that what you recall as well, Mr. Johnson?
I think he did. The ones I've seen, his name is, he's the one that signed for them, yes.
Okay, and you mentioned it in passing when Ms. Honaker asked you a question about the leases and kind of how they proceeded. I think you said we did 3 vehicles and then we did more, and some of the lease terms are up and you have come to the end of some of the leases. Did I mishear that? Have you reached the lease end of any of your leases yet?
I don't think so. I don't think so on that, but I know we had the trucks are and still are. The used vehicles are selling so high. See, when we take care of our fleet, I'd have to give a head, really, our team up here really does a good job on maintenance and keeping our vehicles up.
Oh.
Really looking good, and that's important to me that we have a good image with Rowan Water in our community. But I think I don't think your leases are all run out. I may be wrong on that, but I know we're selling these trucks as we go back in and getting a really better return than we even thought we would on that. When we purchase a new truck, it's not costing us very much that way. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
I think I may have some follow-ups for Mr. Patrick, but I have one more question about that. Did you have the opportunity to review the actual lease agreements that the district entered into, or did Mr. Patrick do that?
Mr. Patrick, he was probably the one that did the lead on that. Since then, we have looked into some of them, but at that time, I probably don't recall doing that, but I just knew the terms of the leases, and the board, we discussed the terms on that, and we were in agreement that what it was going to cost us, and we evaluated we just thought between purchasing the vehicles outright and these leases with getting maintenance on them and keeping it that we were, just thought we were doing Rowan Water really a service to do that, and so that's the way I guess I look at it.
I think I just have one more question, and you may tell me Mr. Patrick's the person who should answer this. But to the best of your knowledge, how many vehicles are being used by Rowan Water that are leased from Enterprise currently?
I think right now we have 7 online that's being leased. We have one, we always keep one vehicle for a backup. If we have a vehicle go down or something in 3 days, we have one backup vehicle. So a total of 8, I understand, I think.
Okay. And if I wanted to go through the specifics of those, Mr. Patrick would probably be the best person to ask?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am, he would, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't have any questions.
I don't.
Mr. Johnson, how many years have you been on the board?
I'd have to look to be specific on that, but I know it's been well over 20 years. And I think around 24 years.
Okay.
I replaced probably one of the founders of the board, and through the years, I've really, it's been an important position for me to be in the community, to be a part of this this utility. It's been really good to serving a lot. I think when I first come on, we had fewer than 30-some hundred customers. And right now, we're running over 7,000, 300 or 400 maybe, 7,500 maybe even. But I've been around a while, seen a lot of improvement, and a lot of folks get water that normally didn't have before.
During that time, during your entire time there, were you aware that your rates and your service are regulated by statute by the Public Service Commission?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Mhm.
Okay. And have you ever taken time to read those statutes related to the regulation of Rowan Water?
Not thoroughly, but maybe some highlights, some things from time to time, but not thoroughly. No, sir. I admit that. No.
Okay. Do you, how do I ask this? wi- Have you had more than one manager since you've been there?
Yes, yes, sir. I think Mr. Patrick, their second manager since I've been here, second manager, yeah.
When you got a new manager, did you all provide them the new manager any documentation about what their expectations were? Is there like a manual that you all give them to say this lays out what we expect your job to do and how to do it?
Yeah, we do. We have manuals on that and our bylaws and so forth. But yeah, there's a manual of leadership manual and for his management level, yes.
Okay. Does the manual indicate an expectation that the manager provides you all either the orders entered by the commission or the information that's in the orders?
I think it does.
Okay. So as a post-hearing data request, we're going to ask Ms. Honecker for that document that Mr. Johnson is referring to. Okay. So you're saying it was your expectation based on those, is it your expectation based on those manuals that your manager was going to provide you the order in a timely manner?
Yes, he has, and time to time, I say, well, he's always referring to that, so I think so, yes, sir.
Well, I don't know from your answer. Is it your expectation that he would give you a copy of the order?
No, I don't guess so. I don't think we'll recall that, no.
Okay, well, what is your expectation? But before all this happened, what was your expectation from the manager about orders entered by the Public Service Commission?
Well, he's been thorough on presentations of bringing towards policies and orders, and I thought he's been up to date on that, and all I can say is that he's very adequate on that. I'm presenting that. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
Well, it's an answer. Let me ask real quick with the leases. Well, no, that'll be fine. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
thank you.
Ms. Honecker, any redirect?
No, I don't. Can he be excused?
He can be excused. Let's just take a short recess, make sure he can sign off, and then we'll go off the record for a minute, and we can get him removed. Okay.
Are you sir?
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. You may be excused.
Yeah. You can
Okay,
log out now, Mr. Johnson. You're finished.
All right, we'll take a short
Thank
recess.
you.
We're back on the case record in 2022-00252. Mr. Johnson has been excused for the remainder of the hearing. Yeah. So, Ms. Honaker, would you like to call your next witness?
We call Jerry Patrick.
All right, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
All right, please have a seat. State your name and address for the record, please.
Jerry Patrick, 8660 US Highway 60 East, Moorhead.
Okay. Ms. Patrick, would you bring the microphone a little closer to you, maybe right in front of where your hands were there? Thank you. With the plexiglass there, however loud you think you need to speak, just add about 15 or 20% more to it. It really does push all of the volume that way when everybody else is sitting on this side of it. So
All right.
I appreciate it. Ms. Honaker, you may ask.
All right, can you hear me okay? Or do I need to
Yes.
speak louder? Okay. What's your position with Rowan Water?
Manager,
And how long have you been employed total at Rowan Water?
about 26 years,
And how long have you been manager?
23 years.
Okay. Did you file a response to the commission's order opening the investigation into this matter that you swore an affidavit to?
Yes,
And are you aware, why we're here today?
yes,
Okay. And one of those reasons is for failing to file the rate procedure that was ordered in case 2021-00042 by the time that the commission had prescribed you to do so?
yes,
Are you aware of that?
yes.
Did you review that order in that case?
Yes,
Okay. And did you provide a copy of that order to the board after you reviewed it?
no,
Did you provide the board with a summary of what was in that order?
yes,
Did you let them know that the commission had put this provision in there to do the rate increase?
not until I was way too late when I seen that.
Okay, so did you see it when you first looked through the order?
No,
All right. When did you become aware that you had missed this deadline?
when I got an email saying that we was in violation and also a phone call, I think it was from Travis Leach.
Okay, and was Travis Leach commission staff at that time?
Yes,
And he's the one who sent you the email and the phone call?
that's correct.
And so after that, did you inform the board that you all had missed this deadline and that you were in violation of the commission order?
Yes,
Did you willfully violate that commission order?
no,
Have you discussed with the board changes that could be made to make sure that this doesn't happen again, that you don't miss provisions in a commission order?
yes,
And has the board adopted a policy to that effect?
yes,
And since you've become aware that you violated this order, have you been providing copies of orders to the board?
yes,
Are you also aware that we're here today over Rowan Water entering into some vehicle leases that they did not come to the commission and seek approval for?
yes.
At the time that those leases were entered into, did you think that you had to come to the commission under KRS 278-300 for vehicle leases?
No,
Had you ever leased a vehicle before?
no,
Had you ever financed a vehicle before at all?
no,
So you'd always just purchase those vehicles outright?
that's yes,
And prior to the board taking a vote on whether to enter into leases or not, what did you do to kind of see if this would actually be savings or not for the board, for Rowan Water and its customers?
Basically, we looked at the maintenance that we had on each of the vehicles prior to, like I said, this has been back in probably 2019 that this all started with the numbers. We put the maintenance, what it was costing us per vehicle a year just to buy one simple vehicle was close to probably 50,000. We could lease these vehicles, 7 or 8 of them, for that money per year and have all new vehicles on the road. And at the time, I'm thinking, Allison, that we had some 2011 vehicles out there. We had some 2013 vehicles out there. That was costing us quite a bit. We was going to have to do something to our fleet to upgrade. And this, after seeing this and putting numbers to it, seemed to be the best fit.
Okay. And did you talk to other utilities or other businesses in the area that have been leasing vehicles as well?
Yes, my wife worked for the Board of Education. They had been doing it, so she kind of got my interest, I guess. And so when I got my interest piqued and I went into this, unaware of what I should have done.
Okay. And did Rowan Water enter into all these leases at the same time?
No.
Okay. How did you start out and how did you gradually go into this?
I'm pretty sure that we've done 4 trucks to start with. 3 or 4, I'm pretty sure it's 4 that we started out with. And then we seen how that went for a year, then we got in. And these trucks don't come in like, when we started this, we looked at all these trucks. You could do Ford, you could do Chevy, you could do Dodge, whatever. You know, we didn't go out and get the highest priced truck. We kind of held it with work trucks, and we just, you know, doing that and talking with like the school board, the county, the utility plant board, different people. It seemed to be working for them. We wanted to try it to see if it worked for us. The numbers said it did, but we wanted to see. So that's where it kind of started.
Okay. And so at the time that you started leasing, you still owned a few trucks, correct?
Yes, yes,
And did you end up selling those trucks?
yes.
And was that maybe what Mr. Johnson was talking about when he said you sold the trucks and got more out of them than you thought you would get?
Yeah, when we went into these leases, on each lease, it had a place where that enterprise looked at, and they said they valued our truck on the information I had given them. And at the end of us trading in the trucks, I think we had a $12,000 surplus that they missed valuing the trucks by, that we put toward the lease of the others.
Okay. And so you were in the room when Ms. Tussey was asking questions to Mr. Johnson. Are you the person who actually signed the lease agreements for the for Rowan Water?
Yes, I signed them all.
Okay. And we've already talked about, why you didn't advise the board that you thought the KRS 278-300 applied here. To your knowledge, has Rowan Water come to the commission to ask for approval under 278-300 before, prior to this, for other things?
Yes, all the loans that we had done before, we always, any project that we done, where we done USDA loans, everything come before the commission. The refinancing that we had just was in the process of working on, and where this one that come that I missed, yes.
Okay. So the order that contained the provision for you to file a rate case by a certain date was actually a 278-300 case, correct?
Yes.
A financing case. Did you consult with legal counsel at all prior to entering into these leases?
No,
Prior to bringing any of that information to the board?
no,
And will this change in the future for you?
yes,
Okay. And has the board issued a policy on that, on what to do?
yes,
Anytime there's any sort of financing, any leasing, anything like that, will you consult legal counsel prior to entering into those to see if you need approval?
yes, we will.
Did you or Rowan Water willfully violate KRS 278-300 by not coming and asking those?
No,
Have you been provided a copy of that statute now, the 278-300?
yes,
Have you provided a copy of that to your board as well?
yes,
Have you all reviewed that together at board meetings?
yes.
I'm going to go a little bit towards the training. Have you ever had any training since you've become manager at Rowan Water?
Yes, I'm required, I'm a certified distribution operator, so I'm certified, I've got to do 24 hours every 2 years.
Okay, and so you've been doing those?
Yes,
And where do you attend those?
just wherever I can find. Sometimes it'll be in Bowling Green, sometimes, I try to get them close to home.
Okay. And have you discussed with the board maybe the benefits of having some training for the board members might be in light of the things that have happened with the commission lately?
Yes, and we, as a board, had discussed it, probably 3 or 4 times in the past, but we never did act on it.
Okay.
This time, I think we've got the full board's cooperation in acting.
And so do you think that the plan will be to have someone come to the annual board meeting in December every year to provide some training for
Yes.
everyone? And will you attend those trainings as well?
Yes,
And do you think that will be beneficial to both you and the board going forward?
most definitely.
Right. Nothing further?
Ms. Tuzzle?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Patrick.
Good morning.
I know you heard a few of the questions I asked Mr. Johnson. So I'll start with are you in charge of updating the email and contact information for the district with the PSC?
Yes,
Okay, and I think you heard the chairman maybe ask if those expectations are written down anywhere. Do you recall having written expectations with regard to the contact information or passing along orders?
no,
Okay. So when you do that, no one has told you you are required to do so,
no,
and you
No.
haven't reviewed that?
no.
Okay. And then I may have missed it. Ms. Honaker may have asked you. I think in one of your responses, you said you've been at the district for 23 years, or at the utility, I'm sorry, for 23 years?
I've been manager for 23 years. I've been with the utility 26 years.
Okay, so you've actually been with the utility longer than Mr. Johnson?
I think he's kind of a little confused
Oh, okay.
on time-wise, because I don't think Larry was a full-fledged board member when I started, but he was kind of in there getting training or something with the board.
Okay, so he was involved with the utility, but perhaps you've been there longer?
Yeah,
Okay. All right, and then you mentioned that there wasn't anything or written or specific policy requiring you to provide orders to the board, and I know that's been addressed. During the process of this case, have you provided subsequent orders in this case to the board?
yes,
And have you read them?
yes.
Okay. And then I think that you mentioned this in your response, but you and Ms. Honaker had you agree, you all didn't take any steps to file a rate application until the deadline had already passed.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I would like to talk about the leases.
Okay.
And I'll just be honest, I need some help, because even when Ms. Honaker was asking you some questions, I'm confused a hair bit on the timeline. I think we can all agree that in 2019, you entered into at least one lease, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And in evaluating whether this is in the best interest of the utility, I believe you heard Mr. Johnson mention a study. Ms. Honaker has asked you some questions about that.
mhm.
Did you all evaluate the math on other options besides the lease agreements?
Basically, what and I hope this answers your question the way you want it, but basically what we done was we looked at what our maintenance cost was costing us with the other vehicles that we had versus what we could do with Enterprise, and that the maintenance was took care of on that side with Enterprise.
Okay. Is Enterprise the only company that you considered?
Yes,
Okay. All right. Now, I think you may have even sponsored some of it, but I believe you helped Ms. Honaker provide responses to PSC data requests.
Yes.
And you're nodding yes, so, do you have those in front of you, the PSC's second data request? I think I'm gonna focus on item 3 and 4.
okay, I do not, but
Okay. Is
May I
that, is
approach? I
that?
can,
You
I
may.
have an electronic copy I can let him.
I was gonna try to print it out, but it's long, so I apologize.
If you click like response 2 here, it'll take you straight to 2, and then when she switches to 4, if you click
okay,
that, it'll take
all right, I think she wanted 3.
Okay. It was PSC, second request for information, item 3. and then we'll probably go on to item 4.
Okay.
All right, so there's just some responses like 3C or 3D, and then it goes to emails. I'm not sure what, it looks like it says it's page 3 of 30 on that particular top of the page, but it's emails from Rowan Water. And I think there's 3 emails. 4 emails. Have you gotten to those?
I'm kind of lost. Where,
May I approach?
Okay.
I think she's there.
oh, okay.
Page 3 of 30.
Page 3 of 30, is that right?
Yes, page 3 of 30.
So this is where she's starting. If you just arrow down,
Okay.
it'll take you on down.
Okay,
I'm sorry. I know,
that's fine.
it's confusing to me most of the time. Okay, so you mentioned at the beginning that you all sold some vehicles. And according to these emails, I think they're referencing the 4 vehicles you may have sold, or 3 vehicles, I'm sorry, that you sold using Enterprise. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, did you all, when you have this, look at the sales paperwork, it shows Enterprise as the owner of the vehicle.
That is correct.
Okay. So did you deed the vehicles over to Enterprise prior to the sale?
Yeah, we signed for them to take them and sell them, yes.
Okay, so prior to knowing what you might get for them, you signed them over?
Yes.
Okay.
We had a price that they had guaranteed us in the contract.
Okay, so even if they didn't get a certain price at auction, they were gonna give you?
I'm not gonna say that they would give us that, but that's what they
That's-
set the bar low enough that they knew that they could get those.
Okay. And in the emails, it references physical damage insurance. That you can cancel I believe it's the page 4, the second email. It mentions physical damage insurance on this vehicle. Did you all continue to carry insurance on those vehicles after you deeded them over to Enterprise?
No,
Okay. Do you know what they are referring to there?
no, I do not.
Okay. Now, I think you've answered the other question. Now, if you go to page, well, you already answered that one too. 14 of that page 30. It starts with the consignment agreement. And I don't see a guaranteed amount on the consignment agreement. Is there was there another agreement that you're referring to when it came to the amount?
Yes, it would be on the particular vehicle that was replacing the one.
Okay. So further on in your paperwork, probably?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, this is kind of a general question about the leases. You've mentioned, and Mr. Johnson mentioned, that you all kind of did this as a lump investment, 4 vehicles at the beginning to see how it went. If you, and are you in charge of preparing your annual report? Or
Ye-
do you review it?
Yes, I do review it.
Okay. So in your annual report, in the long-term indebtedness category, I think for the year 2020, 2021, and 2022, there are 3 leases listed. But only 1 in 2019, 1 in 2020, and 1 in 2021. So they all have different years that you began the term. Does that sound correct?
Yes, what happens is when we order these trucks from Enterprise, that don't mean we get them today. They kind of come in on a staggered. Whenever they make that truck, then they send it to us.
Okay, so when your response was, we started with 4.
Yeah.
You're saying that you agreed to lease 4 vehicles from Enterprise, and you signed the paperwork of the indebtedness when you actually received the truck.
I don't know if it was when we received the truck or at the time, but I think we signed for 4 to start with.
Okay?
Then, like, we may have done that in June. One truck may not come in till December, and the others may come in January.
Okay. So, is the year of the indebtedness accurately reflected on your annual report?
Yes.
Okay, so the utility would have began making payments, for example, in 2021 on the one that's mentioned last each time.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Then that leads me, and you only see 3 on there, right?
Yeah.
You agree there's only 3 every year, okay. And that leads me to my other questions. So, if you don't mind, to scroll on down to, it's item 4. And then it's also, I think I would say it's page 7 of 64. Its heading is request 4. And then page 7 of 64. It's a fleet management master equity lease agreement, is what you're hunting for.
Can I get out here?
Yeah, she
May I
can.
approach?
You may.
It's always hard using somebody else's computer.
I'm not a computer person.
Page 7 of 64.
Yes.
That's where she's
Okay.
at.
Okay. And I apologize. Again, I promise I will get to the point of all of this in a second.
That's fine.
That is those are your initials down at the bottom of the first page of that document, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the date on this one is July of 2019. And I think your annual report says June of 2019, but based on what you've said, the same vehicle. Okay. And you're nodding yes. And
Yeah.
I'm letting you nod yes because I can see you, but you got to say yes.
Yes.
Okay. On that first page, it is subsection, I would say subsection 3, rent and other charges. Do you see that? And then
Yes.
there is a subsection C on that one.
Yes.
It's kind of a big old long paragraph. As part of that paragraph, there is a mileage cap mentioned, correct?
Yes.
And it's 15,000 miles per year on average, or for a term of 36 months, no more than 45,000.
Yes.
Okay. So your utility has customers in 4 different counties, and they're kind of spread apart. Did you all have the opportunity to review the lease and the mileage cap?
Yes.
Okay, and what was the discussion with regard to that?
We upped the mileage cap on some of the vehicles to 80,000.
Okay,
They done that. Some of them was 75, I think.
and where would that have been done at?
It should be on the papers where it tells each vehicle.
Okay, so you think it would be on the open-end equity lease quote paperwork? Or are you saying there's a whole different lease agreement?
It's one that gives like the price of the vehicle, all the details about it, and down to the bottom, it tells you how many miles it's on, how much it is if you go over those miles.
Okay. I have at least one copy. Would it be okay if I just approached him with one of the open-end lease?
Sure.
Okay. I think it's easier than you trying to scroll, because I want to stay there for other questions, but I just have the one thing highlighted there, the term. Okay. Is that where you think the increased mileage would be?
Yes.
Okay. I just, do you see where it might be? Because it says 15,000 miles. The quote's based on 15,000 miles.
Okay. Go about halfway down the page and it says full maintenance program, contract miles 75,000.
Okay. So in the actual lease for each truck, you do have the contract miles and the overage mileage.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that clears up that. I appreciate you humoring me. Now, the next thing I had a question was, you talk about getting the initial 4 vehicles, and then you heard Mr. Johnson say you think currently you all have 7 with Enterprise, and possibly 8. Yeah?
There is 8.
Yes. Okay. Why are they not listed? I see 2 or 3 say ordered, or a few say ordered. Is it your intention to add those as a long-term indebtedness once you have received the vehicle?
Yes. Well, let's back up. We're putting them on, you're talking about the new ones that are ordered now?
Yes, if you keep scrolling, it looks like there are several. I think the one that I gave you was one that had a term of 60 months. And then beside that, it has a vehicle order type. And the ones that I'm looking at were additional ones, and they all have ordered on them.
Mm-hmm.
Which, according to you, means you don't have possession of them yet.
Are you looking at the writing on that lease?
Yes.
Okay. That was back, I don't know, we probably have those trucks now.
Okay, so if we asked for an updated list of what you have, the length of the indebtedness, you would be able to provide the updated agreements like this, but with the correct information?
Yes.
Current information? Okay. But it's your testimony that you all have entered into 8 lease agreements with Enterprise. Each has a term of at least 48 months,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we back up just a minute?
Yes.
Over 2 of those trucks we have since turned in and got newer trucks.
Okay.
So I think it was 10 total that we have done up to this point.
Okay, can we talk for a second about the 2 that you turned in?
Yes.
Okay. When you all turned those vehicles in, did you have to pay any penalty at that time?
No.
Was that part of the negotiation for the replacement vehicles?
No.
I think you have helped me immensely. I appreciate it. Thank you. That's all I have.
Vice Chair?
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any.
At the time that this occurred, did Rowan Water have counsel, legal counsel?
No.
Okay, so if if you were, well, so you were asked earlier by Ms. Honaker, did you talk to an attorney before entering into the leases? You didn't have an attorney to talk to, is that right?
We have an attorney of record, which is Truman Daynard, but no, we did not talk to him at this time.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, are you of the impression that if you have an issue like this, that you already have clearly defined parameters or approval by the board to go and talk to your attorney about these issues?
Yes.
Okay, so if this comes up if this had come up, let me ask it this way. How were those expectations conveyed to you?
Basically, just by doing the job for so many years.
Okay, so there's never a board vote of, does the board vote and pay this attorney a retainer to stay the association's attorney?
No.
Okay. Had the board ever indicated approval for you to go and talk to this attorney anytime that you need it?
Yes.
They had?
Yes.
Okay, they taken a vote to that effect, or you just had had those conversations?
We just had those conversations.
Okay. Do you, going back, the question I asked Mr. Johnson, do you have a written manual or a written set of directions by the board indicating what their expectations are of you?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Do you have an annual review by the board where they tell you what you're doing a good job at and what you're not doing a good job at?
No, we do not. Basically, they do that each month.
Okay. Had it ever come up in any of your, can you think of a board meeting where a board member specifically said, our expectation is when stuff happens at the Public Service Commission, you tell us about it?
No.
Okay. You received a copy of this order in a timely manner, or the order that, from the 2021 refinancing, you received a copy of that in a timely manner?
Yes.
Okay. Was that by email to the email address that's on file at the Commission for Service, or was that through the attorney that you all used for the refinancing?
That was probably through email.
Okay. And so you don't remember getting anything from your attorney in the refinancing case?
Uh,
I think that may have been Mr. Jones.
yeah, we probably did.
Okay. Did Mr. Jones come and speak to the board about the refinancing case at all?
No, he did not.
Okay. Did you give a presentation to the board after the refinancing was done?
Basically, I just said, look, the refinancing has been approved, and basically that was, that was it.
Okay.
That's,
So walk me through, the order in 2021 had a lot of conversation in there about water loss and that you all had negative net income for 5 years. Did you read any of that when you saw the order initially?
I probably skimmed through it, yes.
Okay. I guess in your response, you specifically state that, in paragraph 6, Mr. Patrick further states that he did not provide a copy of the refinancing order to any of the other individual board members named in this proceeding. Mr. Patrick believed this to be a routine order similar to prior orders received regarding USDA projects and simply overlooked the requirement contained in the order. What would it have mattered whether it was a routine order or not? Let me first ask, what's a routine order?
A routine order is one that you get at after each USDA project that we've always done. I just considered it as like the USDA project, and that it's either approved or not approved.
Okay. So if it had not been a routine order in your mind, how you perceive a routine order, what would you have done relative to the board?
I'd have probably read it a lot better, and I always try to tell the board what comes through. I don't always give them copies up until now. I will, but up until that time, I did not give them copies of everything that come through there.
But I guess what I'm asking is, what would the order have to say for you to give them a copy of it?
Not necessarily would have to say something, anything in particular. It was just one that I wasn't expecting or something would be my.
Whose obligation is it to read the orders?
It's mine.
Let me ask you this question. You all produce your own water?
No, sir.
Okay. You do distribution, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you have to do testing at all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. if you know you're supposed to do the testing and you don't do the testing, do you believe that that would be willful?
If I know it,
Mhm.
yes.
Okay. So what's the difference between doing testing, for instance, for the Division of Water and reading the orders that the Public Service Commission issues?
I know with Division of Water, because we do that monthly. PSC order is not something I get monthly, but with Division of Water, I know it's something I've got to do monthly.
So that's the only distinction, is that one happens monthly, but one happens less often. So is it your position that because it happens more often with the Division of Water that it's willful when you don't do it, but because it only happens sometimes here at the commission, it's not?
Yeah, I guess,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Let me ask, when did you start working on the 023 case? When did the district or the association start working on the 023 case?
I'm assuming that is the one with the refinancing?
No, the USDA, the one
Okay.
that included the rate increase.
Oh, law, back in probably late '21.
Late 21. After the order came out in the refinancing?
I'm not sure about that. I know
Okay.
it was
So the
21.
commission issued an order in 2021. Let me get the date here for you. The commission issued an order in 2021 approving your refinancing on April 19th. Okay, 2021. That was the same case where we said you had to file a rate case. So you think it was after that you all started working on the USDA RD application?
It could have been the fall of '20. I know it was after the fall of 2020.
Okay.
Because we had just finished up a USDA project in the fall of 2020. And I know we started another one shortly after, so I'm not exactly 100% sure on the timeline there, but it's between the fall of 2020 and the fall of 2021.
Okay. Had you ever reviewed 278-300 about the evidence of indebtedness?
No, sir.
You mentioned that you all had discussed training in the past. Is that right?
Yes.
You said, I think, maybe 2 or 3 times you all, at board meetings, the association had talked about training?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned something after that about how the full board may now be in support of doing that training. What, was the full board in support of doing the training in those past conversations?
I'm not going to say they was in full support. Some was, some wasn't. Some are no longer there.
Okay.
So,
For those that are named, the board members that are named in this case, with the exception of Mr. Stevens, are any of the other board members, any that were not interested or not supportive of doing the training?
no.
Okay, so it's your testimony that all the board members that had expressed, what's the opposite? Not expressed support, or a doubt about the training are no longer on the board.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Were any of the board members that are currently named in this, other than, of course, besides Mr. Stevens, are any of those board members that were supportive of doing training in the past prior to this case being opened?
Yes, some were.
5 years with negative net income, is that right?
Yes.
Why wasn't something done about that prior to the commission issuing that order in 2021?
Well, we was waiting on to get this project started and going, because we've just always done it with the USDA project, and we had we was not hurting financially, we was going downhill, but we knew that we was going to be applying for a loan to do this and do a rate increase with that with USDA.
But you couldn't buy trucks outright. You weren't financially in a position to buy trucks outright as you had in the past, right?
We could have probably bought trucks outright, but it would have really put us in a lot tighter spot.
Well, then that's the same thing, right? I can go buy I can go buy lots of things, but it's gonna put me in dire straits financially, yeah. So, you have 5 years, that would have been entered in 2021, so the 5 years would have included 2020. So going back 5 years, you all didn't even start talking about the project that you're discussing until at least fall of 2020, is that right? That was your testimony earlier?
Yes.
So you had gone through 5 years of negative net income before that project even came up. So why not in 19 and in 18? Is it not troubling that you had had at least at that point 3 or 4 years of negative net income?
Yes, and in 19, I think, did we not have a rate increase with the USDA project in 2019?
I don't know. But you
we
still
had
had
a small-
negative net. Our evidence here is that you had negative net income regardless. Your net income was negative $564,000 in 2019.
Yes.
Negative $324,000 in 2018. Negative $333,000 in 2017. Negative, well, basically $250,000 in 2016 and $250,000 in 2015. So that to me is 1.6 million. That can't be right. Nope, it is $1.6 million that you all lost in negative net income in that 5-year period. Does that make sense?
Yes. I mean, to a point.
What do you mean to a point?
We didn't have that kind of money to start with.
Well, you would have had the money. That's the thing. You would have gotten $1.6 million if your rates leveled out to end up with a $0 in net income. You understand that, right?
Yes.
That's $1.6 million that you would have been able to put towards projects, right?
Yes.
USDA, when you all get projects through them, does the money cost something? Is it all grants or some of it loans?
It's usually 30% grant and the rest of it is loan.
Okay, so even 70% of it's loans. Loans have an expense to them. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, so there's an interest expense with loans.
Yes, about
Okay.
2.5% usually.
Okay, and interest is effectively compounding. Is that right? Okay. So if you recover depreciation expense, right? Customers pay depreciation expense, you hold it back, and then you use that to do projects. Does that have an interest rate on it?
I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, you have depreciation right now. Is that costing you any additional interest rate?
This is the 2.5 that the USDA charges.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is you've got depreciation expense that you can recover through rates. Okay, you can depreciate your assets. You recover those through rates, you get the money for it, but there's not a carrying cost associated with that, right?
Right.
Okay. So that's cost-free capital that you can reinvest in your system. Okay, so you all missed out on $1.6 million in cost-free money. It only will ever cost $1.6 million, or would have cost $1.6 million, not $1.6 million at 2.5%.
Right.
You missed out on that money for 5 years, and then when you had a project that needed to be done, you went out and financed 70% of it at 2.5%. Is that
Yes.
right? Do I have?
Yeah.
Okay. How is that good for your all's customers?
When you say it like that, it don't sound good.
Okay. And just to be perfectly fair, did I say it wrong?
No.
Okay. Do you all ever talk about net income and depreciation in that context?
Yes.
You all have a little bit of cash, is that right?
Yes, a little.
About $750,000 in cash?
No, sir.
Less than that now?
Yes, sir.
So in 2019, you had cash and cash equivalents of $472,000 and $335,000 in restricted cash. Do you know what the restricted cash is?
Restricted cash is cash that we have to pay the USDA loans.
Okay, so is that a depreciation fund, a minimum depreciation fund that you have, or is that a separate?
That's separate.
Okay. Cash and cash equivalents, what is that?
That's just the everyday operating cash.
Okay. What, are deposits separately accounted for than cash and cash equivalents and restricted cash?
No. Well, the restricted cash is if we get so much in the bank, then we move it over into that there.
Okay, so when I ask how much cash you have, which account should I be looking at?
The one with just the cash.
Cash and cash equivalents?
Yes.
Okay, so in 2019, that was 472,000. Are you aware that in 2019, cash went down compared to 2020, or, sorry, in 2019, the cash account went down compared to 2018 by $50,000?
Yes.
And then 2018 was $41,000 lower than 17?
Yes.
And then 17 was $28,000 lower than 2016?
Yes.
Okay. So not only did you miss out on $1.6 million in cost-free capital that you could have put towards your project, your 023 project that you ended up doing, you also took restricted cash and used it to pay for operations. Is that right?
I don't.
Or not restricted cash, I'm sorry, cash and cash equivalents to put it towards operations. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. So you pulled from cash. Do you earn money on cash?
No.
It's not in an interest-bearing account or anything like that? You all don't keep it in short-term CDs? You just keep it in an account and earn $0?
We have some in a CD.
Okay, but that would have earned you money, right?
Yes.
So if you would have had that between 16 and 19, that extra $118,000 in a CD, that would have actually earned you all interest income, right?
Yes, correct.
And that would offset rates, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In 023 cases, we call them 023 cases because that's the statute that the General Assembly passed that they're filed under. But the USDA cases, I think that's what you call them, right?
Yes.
That you will get financing or grants from RD and the commission approves them in 30 days and you're aware of what I'm discussing, right?
Yes.
But it's tied to a project. There has to be a certificate for a project included in it. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So you all historically, at least since 2002, I think, have never considered raising rates to a level to where you're not losing money unless you're building a new project. Is that right?
That's correct, but we're usually trying to get projects going.
Okay. So are you aware of whether, when the USDA calculates your minimum rates that the commission has to approve, are you aware of whether or not they include depreciation expense?
I'm not, I don't know.
Okay. So if there is an expense that they won't let you recover in those rates, and that's the only way you are raising rates, would you agree that that's just going to grow your negative net income?
Yes.
Your water loss is 21%
Correct.
in 2019. Has it gotten better or worse than that since 2019?
It's probably about the same.
Okay. What's your all's biggest driver of water loss?
All of our lines are basically beside the road, beside the creek, through the creeks, over the cliff, whatever. We're very rural, and we got about 800 miles of line, main line. And the biggest issue we have is a lot of creek rock where leaks don't come up, and it's a continuous battle.
Okay. But what's causing the leaks, I guess is my question.
Different things, the ground, the creek rock has an effect on some of it. Some of it's age. It's just
So when you
different
say
reasons.
creek rock in the ground, is that an issue with the bedding that was initially installed when the pipes were in?
Over time, yes, those rocks, when that pipe moves, there's holes in it.
Well, so when you put in pipe now, though, you don't just put it on rock, is that right?
Right.
What do you put it on?
Well, we try to backfill with the best dirt we can find.
Well, so backfill, but don't you have to bed with something specific as well?
Yes, with the same dirt, topsoil.
Okay, topsoil. How much you use, there's engineering standards of like how much plastic pipe is supposed to go on a certain bedding of soil, right?
Yeah.
You don't, would you agree you don't lay pipe on rock? Or you're not supposed to?
No, right, correct.
Okay. Is it an installation issue with some of your older pipe? Is that what you think is causing the issue, or backfill? Or I'm just curious what you all are finding when you're replacing these leaks.
Nothing really sticks out at any particular leak that why it's like that. Some of it is rock, short.
Okay.
Some of it was backfilled pretty rough. Yes.
Okay. And you all have an engineer, a contract
Yes.
engineer? Does your contract engineer oversee your installation efforts?
Yes.
Okay, so it's up to your contract engineer to find the problems with new installations, is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And have somebody there inspecting the subcontractor or the contractors?
Yes.
Okay. Have you all used the same engineer this whole time?
We have used the same engineer, but 3 different companies I think that they've been with.
Okay, who's the engineer?
Brian Lovin.
And have you found problems with the installations that Brian Lovin or those firms have overseen?
No.
Or do they predate that engineer?
I think they predate that.
Okay. Who do you all depend on for financial information, financial advice about your current operating condition?
A lot of times with the auditor, when they give their annual report,
Okay. Do you all use the same auditor year in and year out, or do you all rotate them every couple of years?
we do not rotate. I think this firm has been with us about 8 or 10 years.
And have they ever indicated a concern about your financial position?
No.
Does that worry you?
Yes.
You all have an accountant?
No.
What are you expecting from the auditor? Like, in terms of, I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you expect when the house is on fire for them to tell you it's on fire, or to give you a heads up when it's just smoking?
I would like for them to tell me if there's a little smoke to,
Okay. Had that been conveyed to the auditor in any way? Asked of the auditor in any way?
yes, and they're pretty thorough.
Okay. You have to do training to keep your, you have licenses, is that
Yes, sir.
right? Yeah. You do training every year, every other year to keep your license, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Is it every year or every other year?
I've got to have 24 hours every 2 years.
Every 2
So
years, yeah.
it may vary. If I may do it all this year, I may do it all in the second year. You know how that goes.
Or the last, like I do with mine, the last month of the time period? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Does the association pay for your training?
Yes, sir.
And do they pay for training for anybody else that works with you that wants their licenses, wants to keep their certifications?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any concern that the association wouldn't pay for board members if they wanted to go to training?
No, sir.
Has that ever been discussed, or has any board member ever asked to attend training and the board and the association pay for it?
I've had one of the board members that's present today has been to some.
Okay.
It's
And-
been a while,
And the
but
association has paid for their training or whatever it is, overnight stay, whatever it may be, just to incent or give them an opportunity to do that?
well, there was no charge at where he went. So.
Okay, all right. But you don't have a concern that they would pay?
Oh
is
no,
what you're saying?
no,
Okay.
no concern.
All right. Ms. Honaker, any redirect to this witness?
No.
Anything else, Ms. Winston? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll just take a short recess. We'll take 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and finish up with all the other witnesses. So we'll be in recess until 10:55. back on the record in case number 2022-00252. Ms. Honaker, would you have to call your next witness?
Come on, Enoch Blair.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
All right, please have a seat. State your name and address for the record, please.
Enoch Blair, 6320 Christie Creek Road, Moorhead.
Ms. Honaker?
And what is your position with the board on Rowan Water?
Right now, co-chairman.
And how long have you been on the Rowan Water Board?
I ran around 20 years, give or take a year.
Okay. Did you file a response in this case when the commission opened the investigation that you signed the affidavit to
Yes,
in
ma'am.
this proceeding? And are you aware for the reasons why we're here today?
Yes, ma'am.
I know you've been in the hearing room listening to the questions as they go by. One of the reasons we're here is failing to file the rate increase or the rate case that the commission had ordered back in a 2021 case. Had you seen that order, or were you aware of that order at the time that it was entered?
Probably at the time it was entered, or,
Were you aware that you were required to file a rate increase?
No.
That Rowan Water was required to file that rate increase? But you were aware that the financing that was in that order had been
Right.
approved? Okay. And when did you become aware that the commission had ordered a rate proceeding to be filed?
well, after it had been done.
So it was after the deadline had passed to file
Yeah.
it? Okay. And was that brought to your attention by Mr. Patrick at that time?
Yeah.
And has the board discussed ways to make sure that you all are more informed and aware of the commission orders that get entered from here on out?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you all adopted a policy that talks to that?
Yes, and we're working on plans to, to get, improve on their operations.
Okay. And have you been provided copies of orders since the time
Yeah,
that this case has been ongoing? And you all have discussed those orders?
yeah.
And did you willfully violate the commission's order to file that rate case?
No, ma'am.
And then, I know you've been in the hearing room and you've listened to some of the other questions. We're also here today about multiple vehicle leases, is that correct?
Correct.
And that Rowan Water and the board, you all did not come to the commission for approval of those vehicle leases before you entered into them, correct?
Did not.
Did the board discuss this at multiple times?
We've discussed the leases, but we were unaware that this had to be brought before PSC.
And it's because it was leases and not a loan? Was that
Correct.
your misunderstanding?
Right.
Okay. And you are aware that the board or that Rowan Water had come to the commission previously to get some things approved through that same statute, correct?
Yes, ma'am. But we've anything that's been required, we've always taken care of. We've never neglected anything.
Okay. And so this was just a misunderstanding that a lease
Correct.
fell underneath that on your all's part?
Correct.
Are you aware that leases fall under that now?
Yeah.
Have you reviewed that statute? Have you been provided a copy of the KRS 278-300 and you've now reviewed that?
Yes, ma'am.
And has the board entered into a policy on how these things will be taken care of in the future?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, working on plans to having that stuff done.
Okay. And during this time, when you were entering into the vehicle leases and doing all that, did you have any legal counsel present at any of those meetings?
No,
Did you all discuss that with legal counsel at all?
I don't think so.
And in your policy that you adopted, is that the plan going forward, that you will speak
Yes.
with legal counsel before
Yes.
doing anything of a financial nature?
Correct, that's part of the plans.
Okay. Did you willfully violate that statute by not coming to the commission? Did you
No,
know
ma'am.
that you should have came and didn't come on purpose?
No, we did not willfully do anything wrong.
And has the board discussed training that may be beneficial to the board and to the general manager? Have you all discussed having someone come in and do training to the board?
We have plans for that, yes.
Okay, and have you yourself had training before, since you've been on the board?
I have.
Okay. And where did you go do that training, do you remember?
There's one, I went to Natural Bridge, then I've gone to different ones on the quarterly meetings that they've had in Moorhead. They usually had them, I think they're now doing them online, but I have gone to a few in and around Moorhead, the quarterly training sessions that they've had.
Okay, and do you know who puts those on, the quarterly training sessions that you had went to before?
No, no, I don't recall.
Okay, and how long has it been, do you think, since you've been to a training?
It's been a few years.
Okay, and do you think it would be beneficial for you and the rest of the board to actually have some training on a regular basis?
Yes, ma'am.
And so you said it's your all's plans to actually do that and have
Correct.
someone come in and give training for you all?
Correct.
All right, nothing further?
Thank you. Mr. Blair, I just had a quick question, and I probably should have asked Mr. Patrick, so if you don't know, that's okay. The chairman asked Mr. Patrick several questions about the 023 case that you all came in for in February. I believe
Yeah.
it was February. Have you all started construction or started working on that particular project?
We have not started any actual work on any projects yet.
Okay. Is there any particular reason for the delay?
Well, everything's been delayed on these, what is it, that,
And we're
Well,
happy for
it-
you to recall Mr. Patrick if you would like to ask that question to him as well.
Okay.
but there hasn't been any projects, well, they haven't been approved to go, or I don't know, through the state or whatever. But we've got some projects that we still got to start, don't we, Jerry?
You'll have to either, if you don't know the answer, then
Okay.
you need to state as much, but you can't get,
We've got some projects to start, but they haven't been started.
okay.
No work.
That's all I have for Mr. Blair.
Had you ever personally conveyed to Mr. Patrick that it's your expectation that he will provide you with orders
No.
entered by the commission?
No.
Okay. Had you, before all of this, had you ever reviewed any of the statutes or regulations dealing with the Public Service Commission?
No.
Okay. So when you said you didn't know that leases needed to be approved by the PSC, what was your understanding of what needed to be approved by the PSC?
Well, what we'd dealt with through the years, the loans and about any kind of proceedings with the loans and other dealings there that we usually have to get PSC's approval on, but we didn't know, or I didn't know that the financing on the leases was considered the same as a loan.
Do you know whether or not if Rowan Water needed to get a one-year loan, whether that would require PSC approval?
It probably would.
Okay.
But I mean, usually we check on those things like that, and we go through the proper procedures to get that done.
That's what I want to ask, though. How do you mean you check on them? Walk me through the process of how you all feel comfortable with what does and doesn't need approval, what the law requires.
I guess Mr. Patrick checks with PSC or whoever we're dealing with. I don't.
You all wouldn't call an attorney or ask anybody legal advice whether or not something required PSC approval?
They've taken care of that. As far as me personally, I don't know that anything that we've had to use PSC for, we've done.
Who's they?
Well, around water, any kind of projects we've done, it, like on these, doing water line, projects and so on like it there, we've always gone through PSC, seek their approval to start with.
Right, but you said you were dependent on them to let you know was I
I
thought
guess
what you
Mr.
said.
Patrick, I reckon.
Okay, so not an engineer, not an attorney?
Well, he usually takes care of getting hold of the attorneys. That's
Okay.
that's what he has done in the past. That anytime we've needed to get hold of an attorney for anything, well, he's been the one that's gotten a hold of them.
Okay, so you were just dependent on Mr. Patrick for all of this?
Right.
Okay, so how do you hold Mr. Patrick accountable if he doesn't do what you, well, let me first, do you feel like you've clearly conveyed to Mr. Patrick the expectations of what he ought to do?
Probably not.
Okay. And then if you have conveyed what you expect him to do, how do you all hold him how do you all, if you don't know what he's supposed to be doing, I struggle to ask the question because it feels like a circle, like I'm asking, but if you don't know what he ought to be doing, how do you hold him accountable for what he ought to be doing?
Well, if it's something through lack of knowledge, I wouldn't hold him accountable for anything that, he didn't know about.
Okay. Do you think you should have known that you should have known about the requirement to file approval for the leases? Or do you feel like that's something that was somebody else's job to know?
I guess in one way, one should probably find out about these things. That probably should have been part of my responsibility. If to try to, see what's what. But like I said, Mr. Patrick usually takes care of the like the leases and stuff like that. There, he spearheaded that.
Okay. So, just so I'm clear,
That should have been part of my responsibility, I'd say.
okay. And just, what's your understanding of what your all's process is now? If the commission enters an order in a case, what have you all conveyed to Mr. Patrick that your expectations are going forward?
Well, if y'all convey an order, we expect him to take care of it, or to abide by it. We try to abide by anything that the PSC says. We don't willfully do anything against them.
Well, that's fine. I mean, our job is to do what the legislature says. Like we get told by somebody else, and we do it. I'm trying to find out if it's your expectation that Mr. Patrick's going to take care of it. Is that something that you all have explicitly told him? Do you all have a written process now where when an order is entered, Mr. Patrick within so many days sends you all a copy of it? I mean, well, I'm asking, like, hard and fast, what is the new rule in town that it sounds like you all have from your questions
Well, the
for Ms. Honaker?
new rule would be that he would let us know what's going on, and for us to take care of it, whatever
Okay.
it needs.
Mr. Johnson said that he was occasionally getting emails with copies of the orders. Are you also getting copies of the order?
No.
Okay. You all get board packets when you all have board meetings?
Yes, sir.
Has the board voted to require that Mr. Patrick provide copies of that orders entered by the commission over the last month to be included in those board packets?
I don't think there's been anything voted like it, like through the board packet, or been on the list to do or whatever like that there.
Okay. Did you all see copies of the leases before they were entered into?
Yeah,
You saw copies of the leases?
yeah,
Okay. And did you all take a formal board vote to allow Mr. Patrick to sign those leases?
yes, sir.
Okay. And who provided you a copy of the statutes, 278, 300? Did Ms. Honaker or did Mr. Patrick?
I don't know if she brought them to Mr. Patrick or
Who gave them to you?
Mr. Patrick.
Okay, that's what I need to know, so. And was that at a board meeting or outside of a board meeting?
Board meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Blair. Ms. Honaker, is there anything else?
No.
Any questions yet for Mr. Blair? All right, you may be excused. Would you like to call your next witness?
Mike Collins.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
All right, please have a seat. State your name and address for the record.
Name's Mike Collins, 125 Innovations Drive, Moorhead, Kentucky.
Ms. Honaker?
Mr. Collins, can you state your position with Rowan Water Board?
I'm now treasurer.
And how long have you been on the Rowan Water Board?
Been on the board 16, 17 years.
16 or 17
Yeah,
years?
17, I believe.
Okay. And did you cause a response to be filed in this proceeding once the commission issued its order instituting this investigation?
Yep.
And did you sign an affidavit to that effect on your response?
Yes,
And I know you've been in the hearing room this entire time, so you're aware of why we're here today.
yes,
At the time that the commission issued its order in the 2021 case on the refinancing, and there was the requirement to file a rate proceeding within a year, were you aware that that was contained in that order at that time?
no, I was not.
And when did you become aware of that?
Yeah, it had already expired. It was past time.
Okay. And how did you become aware of that?
Well, Jerry told us.
Okay,
I
and
mean,
that
we
was at a
knew.
board
Yeah,
meeting?
Yeah, I was at a board meeting.
And he let you know that the time had already expired, so you were in violation of that order?
Yeah, we pretty much all found out about the same time, yes.
Okay. And did you willfully violate that commission order?
Absolutely not.
And have you all put some policies into place regarding what will happen in the future?
Yes,
And have you been provided with copies of orders since that time?
yes,
And have you all discussed any necessary orders at board meetings?
yes, if so, yes.
Okay. And one of the other reasons why we're here is because of some vehicle leases, is that?
Yes.
And are you aware that those vehicle leases were entered into without commission approval?
Yes,
And at the time that the board discussed these leases, at the board meetings, were you aware that you needed to come and seek commission approval for
No.
those leases?
no, I was not.
And what was your understanding as to why you didn't, didn't you think that?
For all the years we paid, pretty much just paid for the vehicle in total. We didn't finance any of that, and we didn't see leases financing. It's just an oversight,
So that was your misunderstanding that
Yes.
the lease actually fell underneath that category?
yes.
And are you aware that Rowan Water had come to the commission and sought approval under that 278-300 statute before? And during any of these board
Sorry, I didn't hear
meetings,
the response.
Yes,
Okay.
during any of these board meetings, did you have legal counsel present when you were discussing the leases?
no,
Did you speak to legal counsel, or are you aware if anyone else spoke to legal counsel prior to entering into those?
no.
And going forward, has the board discussed and issued a policy on those matters as well, on the financing issues?
Yes,
Have you since been provided a copy of KRS 278-300?
yes,
And have you reviewed that?
yes,
And is it the plan to review that on an annual basis at least?
yes, ma'am.
And will you be seeking legal counsel and discussing with legal counsel in the future any financing issues that may arise?
Yes,
Were you present at board meetings when there was discussion on maybe obtaining training for the board members and the general manager?
I don't recall. That's something we've spoken about just amongst ourselves, not during a meeting.
Okay.
Just potential chances to go to trainings, but personally, I never got to go. I've not been to one.
Okay. So were you present at the board meeting, the last board meeting, when you all discussed having someone come in and train you
Yes.
all on an annual basis?
Yes, mhm.
And is that the plan you think going forward, is
Yes,
to
ma'am.
have
It is.
someone come to your annual meetings in December?
Absolutely.
All right, I have nothing further.
Ms. Tessie?
I just have a couple of questions. Mr. Collins, you mentioned in one of your responses to Ms. Honaker that the reason you all didn't think approval was needed is because you didn't see a lease as financing. Did I hear you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, as part of your responsibilities as a board member, do you generally review the annual report?
We do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you go over each section when it's done and talk about it?
Yes,
And you would agree with me that the leases appear as long-term debt in your annual report?
I can understand that, yes.
Okay, so can you reconcile those two statements? That you acknowledge they're on the debt, but you didn't think they were financing?
We saw the leases completely different. We thought that that was something that we could do on our own. We didn't know that we needed approval. And so we thought financing was different. Having to finance for an extended period of time. It's confusing. It is. But we didn't think we needed approval. We never seeked it before with automobiles.
Okay, but you do acknowledge that you reviewed the annual report and saw them listed as long-term debt?
Yep, I did.
And you never raised that issue with anybody else on the board?
No, I did not.
Okay, that's all I had.
Vice Chair.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
as treasurer, do you have any particular training in finance, accounting degree, or anything like that?
No, I don't. I'm a registered nurse. No, I don't.
Okay, you just volunteered or got voluntold that you'd be the treasurer?
Yep, yeah, just sort of moved up the ladder, I guess you'd say.
I think the rest of the questions I had have been answered. Thank
Okay.
you.
Commissioner Regan?
Would the loss of the 1.6 million be of a concern?
Well, it should be, yes. Mhm.
So going forward, will there be more reviews and
Absolutely.
take a look at that and see
Mhm.
where the water loss is and
Yes.
what needs to be done?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
How long have you been treasurer?
Just a few months, yeah.
Who was treasurer before that?
Mr. Blair.
Do you know how big the financing was that you all sought in February of this year?
I don't recall a number, no.
Okay. So I've got the RD application in front of me.
Okay,
Paragraph 5 of the application says that Rowan Water proposes to finance the construction of the project through, one, the issuance of a $1.12 million promissory note and a USDA RD grant in the amount of $737,000. And that Rowan Water has a commitment from RD to purchase the note over 40 years at a rate not to exceed 2%. Does that sound familiar?
it sounds familiar, but I don't know the exact numbers.
Okay. Did you hear the questions I had for Mr. Patrick earlier?
Mhm.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe that you all didn't lose in negative net income over $1.6 million between 2015 and 2019?
I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers that close over all those years, to be honest.
Okay. You all aware of what your net income loss was in 2022? The most recent annual report you filed with the commission?
I can't remember,
Does approximately $300,000 sound about right?
possibly. Mhm.
Okay. So it's $300,000 of negative net income. Even assuming you had rates with the commission that were at a level to have $0 negative net income, the difference between those two situations is $300,000, right?
Correct.
Okay. What are your thoughts about leaving on the table over the last, because 2021 was about 300 and something thousand. What are your thoughts about leaving on the table $2 million in cost-free financing that could have paid for this project, as opposed to financing of which, 2/3 of the money cost 2% a year?
Well, it's not a positive thing to lose, of course, but that's one of those things down the road, we need to look at more increases, rate increases, unfortunately. But we try to keep our rates as low as we can, and that's probably to our demise, try to be too cheap. Want to be comparable to other districts, but, yeah.
Well, but ultimately, the rates are not going to be more than they would have had they just been higher before, right?
Possibly, yeah.
Well, how would it be if it wasn't possible?
Okay, help me, I'm getting confused here.
Okay, so so going from your annual, the order that told you all to file the rate case, effectively had a chart on it that showed the last 5 years' finances.
Okay.
Have you seen that chart or that order?
I believe I have. I can't say for sure.
It shows a snapshot of the last 5 years' finances from
Okay.
from the utilities annual reports, which shows the cumulative negative net income is in excess of $1.6 million.
Okay.
Negative. The commission also has on file the 2021 and 2021 and 2022 annual reports that show a negative net income of more than 300,000 each year.
Okay.
That's an additional at least 600,000.
Okay.
That doesn't even include 2020
Yes,
all
sir.
those numbers. Okay. So that's well in excess of $2 million of negative net income.
Okay.
Had customers had rates that paid them, that you all just broke even every year on net income, okay? You all would have collected well in excess of $2 million that you could have held aside. Is that right?
Sure.
That math makes sense. Okay. You all have a project here that you all are financing that costs about $1.85 million.
Okay.
That you all are borrowing $1.1 million of that amount at 2% a year. Okay? Had you recovered $0, had rates that broke even all those years and set that aside into a depreciation account, you could have financed this project without having to borrow any money and without the cost of borrowing. Would you agree?
I would agree.
And you also could have put that money you recovered through depreciation expense over that in excess of $2 million, you could have earned a little interest through a CD or an interest-bearing account. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. So comparing those two scenarios, what would have happened had you recovered that money in rates that were adequate just to break even on net income every year versus now having to borrow money to do this project, which ones do you think in the long term customers are going to pay more?
Well, I mean, I don't know all the numbers. I mean, I can't, I'm sure down the road, I mean, with us being at a loss, I mean, I'm sure something would happen to where they would have to pay more, I guess. I mean, I'm not
To
for
borrow
sure.
the money?
I mean, to borrow the money with the interest, yeah, I guess they would have to pay more.
So just going back to a couple of the questions asked Mr. Patrick. I get that this case is open and you all have now talked about training and now have looked at the statute. All that aside, talk about finances for a second, because this is really what we're talking about here.
Sure.
Right? You all got the lease, I heard, because effectively you all had always bought vehicles, but you were concerned about what financial shape you'd be in if you bought them outright now. So you decided to lease instead. Not commenting on that decision, but that's what the testimony was today. So it all comes back to the finances of Rowan Water. What have you all done or are doing to make sure that your finances are adequate?
We just, and honestly, we go by what our CPA says. Bill Huffenstein, that's who does our books, and that's who we trust them.
You say do your books. Are they an accountant or an auditor?
Well, more auditor, I should say, auditor. Yeah, end of the year, the numbers, all the financial numbers.
So you all lost, you've been with them 8 to 10 years was the testimony today. You all have lost a negative net income in excess of $2 million over the last 7, 8 years.
True.
How's that working out?
It doesn't sound like it's working very well, just to be honest. We're gonna have to make a change, or we're gonna have to do something
I mean,
different.
do you all, I guess what I'm trying to find out, when the auditors come and present all this stuff, do you all have questions for the auditors looking through the annual report?
We do. We do.
Do they help you do the annual report? Okay, so do they show up at a meeting and present the annual report, or is Mr. Patrick?
We'll show up at the meeting, they're at the meeting.
Okay, so has anybody ever asked the question of the auditor, why is it that you're giving us a great, you're not saying anything negative except we have negative net income for the last, in excess of half a decade?
If it's happened, I haven't heard it, no.
So you said that you were under the impression, I took it, that you had to seek approval, the statutes require you all to seek approval before financing, is that right? Okay. Where did you glean your impression from? Was it just course of conduct? Was it what Mr. Patrick had told you? Was it from other commissioner, other district members? Just curious, what was the course of conduct? What was your Why was that your understanding? That's the best way to ask it.
My time on the board, that's how we carried out things before. We thought it was very similar. We didn't think we needed some type of approval. And plus, it was tough. It was confusing. I mean, now we know, now we understand, but we didn't think that we needed approval for that.
Okay. Whose obligation was it to go look?
To go look,
Yeah.
Jerry.
So if it was exclusively the manager's obligation to look and know whether financing was required, then why is it important for us to know now that you all have been given a copy of the statute?
Why is it important? Well, I mean, originally we didn't know at all, and we missed several things. We've made our mistakes. We're wrong. I mean, I don't know really how to answer that question. I mean, it's just.
Well, no, but you got asked the question earlier. Have you been given a copy of 278-300?
Yeah,
Is my
we have.
understanding, and yeah, we have. But if it's your all's position that you all don't need to know that, and it's only Mr. Patrick that needs to know that, and you all are dependent on him, and that's his obligation, then what's the importance of it?
What's the importance of it?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out from this perspective.
Okay.
Do you think you need to know as a board member that requirement and what the statute says?
Yes.
Okay. So is it your obligation to go find that out, or for Mr. Patrick to have told you that?
I would think of it for Mr. Patrick to tell us that.
Do you feel like that's been clearly conveyed over time, that's the expectation, in either written or orally?
But yes. Yeah.
How so?
Well, 17 years there. I mean, Jerry he's got a very big job. I mean, he covers everything. He researches for us and looks a lot of things over. He understands it better than anybody. Myself, I have a full-time job. We meet from 2 to 3 hours, whatever the hours is, that's all I'm there. That's all I really get to spend time with it.
You all meet every month?
Yes, every month.
You said 2-3 hours every month, or
Yeah.
2-3 hours total? Okay.
Yeah. Unless there's an emergency, just the one meeting.
Okay. Does Mr. Patrick do the monthly finances and then provide them to you to report on, or does he report on those at those monthly meetings?
He collects them, but I report.
Okay. And does he send that to you ahead of time, ahead of the meeting, or do you get it in the packet with everybody else?
Usually ahead of the meeting.
Okay. And then if you have questions or need to have a conversation with him, you all sit down separately and have that discussion?
At times, if there's questions, yeah.
Okay. And then the annual report, do you get that the same time the rest of the board, or?
Yes.
I guess were you in your current role on the board when the last annual report came out?
No, sir.
Okay. Does the treasurer have a different role when it comes to the annual report, the financial?
The annual report, I'm not for sure.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Any questions for this witness? All right, thank you. You may be excused. Would you like to call your next witness?
We call Randy Cox. In the heading of the order, he was listed as Danny Cox, so go.
All right, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
All right, please have a seat and state your name and address for the record. Your right
Randy
name.
Cox, 195 East Clack Mountain Road, Clearfield, Kentucky, 40313.
Thank you, Mr. Cox, and I apologize that the order got your name wrong. Sorry about that.
Excuse me, sir. Oh, that's fine, sir.
I'm sorry they got it wrong, so.
That's fine, sir.
We got you here anyway, so I know you're very excited about that. Ms. Honaker, do you have any questions for Mr. Cox?
What is your position on the board?
Board member, ma'am.
Okay. And how long have you been on the Rowan Water Board?
since 2017, which would be right at 6 year.
Okay. And I know you've been here in the hearing room this whole time. Did you also file a response, an individual response that you signed an affidavit for when the investigation was opened in this proceeding?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're aware of why we're here today?
Yes, ma'am.
And at the time that the order was entered in the 2021 case that directed Rowan Water to file a rate increase within a year, were you aware at that time that that condition was in that order?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and were you provided a copy of that order or anything at all?
Yes, ma'am, after it was past due.
Okay, so after it was become aware that you all had missed the filing deadline, that's when you received a copy of the order?
Correct, ma'am.
And that was when it was discussed that you all had missed, that's when you became aware that that condition was in the order?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you willfully violate that commission order?
No, ma'am.
And I know you've been in the hearing room, so you're aware that we're also here on some vehicle leases, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And did the board discuss those leases at several meetings, or was this just a one-time discussion and you entered into them?
We discussed them probably a couple months out before they were actually voted on.
Okay, and did you compare prices? How did you all decide to?
Basically, when we got down to cost comparison, I know Enterprise was the only local. They have an actual office in Moorhead, so it was the only local company that offered leases for us. And basically what we did is Jerry had a comparison from Enterprise, basically a chart of each vehicle we could get and how much that vehicle would cost Rowan Water. And we kindly looked at the cost of maintenance, because at the time we'd had a truck that I think it was 2 or 3 times that we had transmission go out on it, and they had spent like $6,000 to $7,000 on this one truck. We were buying at least, this was I think 2019, so I'd only been there for like 2 years on the board, but in those 2 years we had bought a new vehicle each year, which was $40,000 to $50,000 per vehicle. And we considered that Enterprise put tires on the truck, they provided free oil changes, and then we didn't have to worry about having a truck that was broke down, and we would have vehicles that were reliable. So basically those were the cost comparisons that we did. And if you would add those costs up, just buying one vehicle, like I said, is $40,000 to $50,000. And at the time, I think 8 vehicles were costing us, I'd have to look at the financial statement, but it's like $4,200 a month. So, that we had 8 brand new vehicles that were reliable for the cost of buying one a year. Plus, they had the gas cards per vehicle. Instead of using one gas card per Rowan Water, each vehicle made it easier for Jerry to monitor the gas on those vehicles and how much gas was actually, to hold the employees accountable for the vehicle and the gas.
Okay.
So those were the factors that we considered in on the vehicles.
And did you discuss this with legal counsel at any time?
No,
before you entered
ma'am,
into
we
them?
did not.
Okay, so there was no legal counsel at any of the board meetings?
No, ma'am.
All right. And were you aware at the time that a vehicle lease fell under the 278-300 statute on financing?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Since that time, are you aware now that they
I am
that they
now.
fall under if they're a certain length of time?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you been provided with a copy of KRS 278-300 now?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you reviewed that?
Yes, ma'am, I
And
have.
has the board reviewed that and discussed it at meetings?
Yes, ma'am.
And has the board taken some steps to try to make sure that these types of mistakes don't happen in the future with regard to review of commission orders and financing issues?
Yes, ma'am, we have. We've came up with policies and procedures for that.
Okay, and have you been provided, since these policies have come into effect, have you been provided with orders from the commission?
Yes, ma'am.
And you've reviewed those orders?
Yes, ma'am.
And is the new policy going forward on financing, will you all discuss any financing issues with legal counsel before you enter into those?
Yes, ma'am, we will.
And has the board discussed the benefits of having some training for each of the board members and for your general manager?
Yes, we have, and like few of them said already, it's been discussed over the years, but nobody's really acted on it. And it's really come to a head here lately, and basically we want to do some kind of training that basically can be recorded with PSC if we can. We just don't want to jump in and do miscellaneous training. We want something that's actually, PSC can look at it and say, hey, Rowan Water has took an initiative to do this training, and they can look at the training that's been completed.
Okay. And is the thought right now that would happen at maybe the annual board meeting in December every year?
Yes,
so that
ma'am,
you
that's
can
what we
kinda keep it-
discussed last board meet on December.
Okay. And is it your opinion, did you willfully violate the KRS 278-300 when you entered into these leases? Did you do that willfully?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Nothing further.
Stacy?
Thank you. Mr. Cox, you filed a response, and at the end of your response, you wrote your own little letter. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. I had a couple questions about your letter. Do you recall in the first paragraph you addressed specifically the enterprise rental vehicles? Do you recall what you might have said?
I have that. Can
Okay.
I look at that?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, I have it.
Okay. I just had a couple questions about the paragraph that has the number 1
Yes, ma'am.
listed. You mentioned that to date, the leases have saved Rowan Water thousands of dollars in maintenance and cost and man hours.
Yes, ma'am.
Since you all have had the vehicles, has anybody actually tracked how much time or money has been spent, if any, on those vehicles? Like in oil changes or things that you no longer have to pay for but are still being done to the vehicles?
When you ask that question, I mean, basically me personally, I look at the financial statement and I look at what we pay to Enterprise that month, and usually there's no maintenance on that financial statement because all the maintenance is paid for by Enterprise. So as I look at that financial statement, I would say yes, we have saved money. And I know to me, there's some kind of misunderstanding on the Enterprise. We didn't go to Enterprise because we couldn't afford to buy a vehicle straight out, because we're paying Enterprise $4,200 a month anyhow, so we could afford to buy one vehicle a month. And if we ever decided to get out of the lease, it's almost like you going and buying a vehicle on a lease, and you decide to buy the car outright when the lease is up or whatever's owed on it. We can do that and go back to that. That's the reason we went first to the 2 or 3 vehicles to test the waters on it, and we like what we saw. So, yeah, I would say to me, by looking at the financial statement, I would have to say that we saved money. Where we messed up is we didn't. Would I change my mind on it? No. Where we messed up is we didn't. I didn't know anything about the PSC that we had to have the approval to buy the vehicles, the 278-300.
Can I ask you a question about the financial statement? You've referenced it a few times. And I know in some of the agreements, there's reference to a fuel card, and that was one of my next questions, was about the enterprise fuel card. So when you say you're looking at the financial statements, are you talking about the monthly bill
Yes,
from
ma'am.
Enterprise?
I'm talking about the financial statement that comes in our board packet that has all the basically what was paid to Enterprise that month as far as the lease, that her monthly payment for that lease.
Is gas a separate line item then? Or fuel expense?
It should say on that, say on the, I don't have a financial statement with me, but it's stated on there. I don't know exactly how it's read on the financial statement, but it is on that financial statement every month of what we pay Enterprise.
Okay, before you entered into those agreements with Enterprise, from the sounds of your statement, it doesn't sound like you all tracked your fuel expense.
Before Enterprise, ma'am?
Before Enterprise, did you all track your fuel expense?
Basically, to my understanding, I mean, it was the company, or Rowan Water credit card, that one credit card that the fuel went on. I'm not saying that we saved money on fuel, ma'am. I'm saying that it actually, you could track it by vehicle to make sure that probably nobody's taking and I don't want to say this would happen, that somebody's taking a 5-gallon gas can and throwing it in the back of their truck and filling that gas can up and then taking it home with them. They were held accountable for the gas that was used in that vehicle. If they run so many miles and basically the fuel doesn't add up to the miles, then they can be held accountable.
Okay, so the change is not necessarily the money, but in the
Right.
accountability.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all I have.
No, I don't.
You noted that you didn't know the requirements under 278-300 or the requirements to file a rate case. Whose obligation is it, at least as it relates to the financing, to make you aware of whether it's required?
To me, sir, it's all of us. I mean, it's the board, it's Mr. Patrick, the manager, it's all of us to know all that. And if we don't know it, that's where the training comes in and educate each other.
Yeah. So, you answered to Ms. Honecker earlier that your violation wasn't willful. I guess I asked the question from a perspective of how do you perceive your role to be, what do you perceive your obligation to be in asking questions?
Basically, if I have a question on it, I should step up and ask that question, but I think at the time when we did the only time, 2019 is when we went into the Enterprise, started talking about the Enterprise. 2017 is when I came on board. And PSC, the only time that I'd actually seen PSC and understood it was when I think we had a loan that was already in process when I came on board. And it was the East Clack Mountain project with the new water tower and everything. And I knew that PSC had to, even though it was through Kentucky Rural Water, PSC had to approve that. So I was not aware that PSC, I wasn't even aware of the 24-month rule, and that PSC had to approve that for vehicles. I was thinking at the time that it was the board could make that decision on vehicles, and we didn't just blatantly do it. I wasn't aware of the rule, and I thought I was doing it for the paying customers of Rowan Water at the time.
Yeah, and my question isn't based off of the individual finances of leasing versus purchasing or borrowing or anything like that. It's, the legislature put a statute in and then they told us, hold people accountable for that statute. Utilities have to do this, and we're the people that regulate utilities. But I guess, when it comes to willful, it sounds like some of your testimony is that it comes off to me as your testimony is basically, we didn't ask the questions, no one told us we had to, So because we didn't know we needed to, it wasn't a willful violation. Is that the wrong way to look at your testimony?
We didn't willfully do it, sir, no. I mean,
Okay.
if I'm coming off that way, no, we didn't. I didn't know. I can say that part.
Yeah, but you've heard the term that ignorance of the law is not a defense. Have you heard that before?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. So I mean, if I don't know that the speed limit's 55, I think it's 75. That's not a defense if I get a ticket, right?
Right.
It objectively is or it objectively isn't. If I was going 75, I was going 20 miles over the speed limit. Would you agree?
Yes, sir. I totally understand, sir, and going forward, I promise you that it will not happen again.
I want to make sure I have an appreciation. What about beyond 278-300? Just real quick. The attorneys, I guess, is where I'm really trying to get to. Ms. Honaker asked you the question about seeking legal counsel. Have you all done something where you're going to now ask legal counsel to come to your meetings?
Yes, ma'am, that is in our policies and procedures, that basically anything that we have a question on, whether it be PSC orders or financial, that we include legal counsel in on that.
I guess what I'm saying, are you expecting Mr. Patrick to go talk to legal counsel, or that the legal counsel will be at your meetings?
If it's something we have a question on, we don't need legal counsel there every meeting. But if it's something we have a question on, yes, we're going to ask legal counsel to come to that meeting so we can consult with them.
So I'm just concerned a little, Mr. Cox, that it depends on you all asking the question. Here, had you asked the question, you all would have gone and sought legal counsel, right?
Yes, sir.
So it still depends on you all asking the question, which would depend on you all being concerned about the application of the law. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
And wouldn't that require some understanding or appreciation of what the statutes require?
Yes, sir, it would.
Okay, so just very directly, other than 278-300, have you all been provided any other statutes to look at or regulations to look at to have an appreciation for what your requirements are under PSC regulation?
No, sir.
You came on the board in 17?
Yes,
Is that what
sir.
you said? Yeah. Were you one of the folks that Mr. Patrick mentioned earlier that may have indicated their interest in doing the training?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have any concern that you won't be reimbursed for your cost of going to training if you wanted to go out and, like, if you wanted to come to Frankfurt, we do training here every December over 2 days. If you wanted to stay between the first day or the second day, or you wanted to come the night before, no, it's not a terrible drive, but if you wanted to come the night before, do you have concerns that Rowan Water would not reimburse you for that training?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay.
They encourage it, sir.
Okay. All right. And then you all have a new board member recently, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Would you encourage that new board member, or have you encouraged that new board member to do PSC training?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You all have not had an annual meeting, or have you all had an annual meeting since this case opened?
No, sir.
You haven't. When do you all have that? Usually at December?
December, sir.
Okay. Just curious, big picture. Have you thought of or had any discussion with the other board members about recommending that it be a requirement in order to hold the seat that you conduct a minimum level of training every year or every other year or whatever it may be?
I totally agree with that, sir. Yes, we have talked about that as board members, to have so much training per year.
Okay. And have you all talked about that just informally, or has it come down to like your all's governing documents as an association that the bylaws would require that once you get voted in, you have to do X, Y, and Z? I'm just curious what the conversation has
It's
been.
been informally, sir, but I'm sure we'll come up with some guidelines and policies and procedures on that as being a board member for Rowan Water, that they have to have so much training and that training recorded.
And finally, I guess I should know this, but you all get a small salary, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that based on how many meetings you go to, or is that just based on being a member of the board?
It's just being a member of the board, sir.
Okay. Do you all have any requirement that you attend so many meetings, or that if you miss so many meetings, you're considered to be kicked off? I'm just curious if you know.
Usually, we've not went to that point, sir, but usually everybody is using 100% accountability for the meetings. We've had like Larry, our chairman cannot be here because of his wife, things like that come
Right.
up. And usually if somebody's not there, it's a good reason for them not to be there.
Yeah, maybe a family vacation, illness in the family, something like that.
Right, I'm Army Reserve and I missed a meeting because I was at Fort Knox a few
Right.
weeks back, so and sometimes we reschedule the meetings to accommodate that individual, so.
Okay, all right, that's helpful, I appreciate it. So y'all don't get paid on a per meeting, y'all get paid monthly, but it's just a 1/12 of the annual amount, is that right?
It's monthly, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, thank you, Mr. Cox. Ms. Honaker, do you have any questions for Mr. Cox?
I do not.
All right, thank you, may be excused. Would you like to recall anybody, Ms. Honaker?
I don't need to recall, but if you still have a question about the construction, I don't mind recalling Mr.
I
Patrick.
would if that's okay.
Okay.
Just a quick question.
We'll recall Jerry Patrick.
Mr. Patrick, just come on up, take a seat, and let us know when you're ready. Just remind you you're still under oath. Ms. Dustin?
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions, Mr. Patrick. I asked about the 023 case, and I didn't ask specifically, I guess the question on the front end would be, you all have already begun to collect the higher rates, is that correct?
Yes,
But you have not begun construction, correct?
correct.
Is there any particular reason for that delay?
USDA is not approved, they've not given us the final words yet on the okay to start construction. It's in review.
Okay. Are you aware of how long a CPCN is effective?
No.
That's all I have.
Just a quick question. When you say, when they responded to you from USDA, was it that you were approved and they're reviewing it? Or you're approved and they're just waiting to release funds?
Yes, we're approved, but we're waiting to release funds.
So they're just reviewing it,
Yes,
but you know the funds are coming?
yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Uh-huh.
What was your last update from RD?
Probably been about 2 weeks ago.
What was the contents of that update?
It's in review.
That's it?
That's,
all?
that's what we got,
That's all
yes.
it said? And are you in contact with them, or is your engineer in contact with them?
I personally am close to USDA there where we are.
Okay,
And also, the engineer is also in contact when they've got other projects with this lady that does the USDA, and they run into one another at other projects.
okay. Do you know whether USDA is aware that there's a time limit to the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity?
I'm sure they should be. I'm not aware.
Well, and the reason I ask is RD does this for all the states across the US, but Kentucky may be unique in that they have a different rule than maybe the other 50 states are, so. This is not a question, this is a statement, but after the hearing, I would certainly speak with Ms. Honaker about the requirements of a Certificate of Public Convenience and assessing whether there's a date in which, you all need to act on that before it possibly expires. Okay. Ms. Honaker, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
I do, one question, Mr. Patrick. Your local attorney, do you know whether they have any experience in PSE regulations or statutes?
I'm sure he's done stuff for us in the past.
What kind of stuff?
Like the meter settings or whatever. He's done stuff like that.
Okay, so,
Tariff issues.
okay, all right, thank you. Anything else, Ms. Honaker? Is there anything else, Ms. Dusty?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. We'll have some data requests. Ms. Honaker, would you like to brief this matter?
I don't think so. We don't want to do a brief, do we? I think we discussed that at the last board meeting or something.
Well, let me just say, Ms. Hunter,
Yeah.
I guess I'll say it this way, since we don't have another party, it really doesn't, it's not like we need to come up with a date at this point, and we don't have a statutory date looming. So we will enter in the next few days a post-hearing procedural schedule. I think we have 1 or 2 questions to ask for just documentation. We'll give you 2 weeks to respond to that. Is that going to be plenty, do you think?
That should be
Given the
fine.
questions you heard today? So we'll give you 2 weeks to respond to that, and then we'll set a date by which, if you'd like to file a brief, you can do so. And if no brief is filed, or regardless of whether a brief is filed, we'll submit the case on the record at that point. Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right, great. All right, is there anything else that we need to take up in this?
I don't have anything else.
So, Ms. Honaker, we'll address your requests in this case with relation to Mr. Cox and Mr. Stevens in a subsequent order, either the scheduling order or the final order. But I would just like to ask again if you could do a notice of filing with an affidavit from one of the other board members. I know that it was mentioned in all of their responses to the order, but if we could just get a month, that would be very helpful for purposes of dismissing Mr. Stevens officially from the proceeding.
Okay.
All right. If there's nothing else, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.